everybody. A warm welcome to Amazing You podcast and YouTube channels, the channels where stories of resilience, triumph, and unwavering hope come to life. And in each episode, we dive into the inspiring journey of individuals who have faced the toughest challenges heads-on and emerged victorious. And our aim is to be a beacon of inspiration, offering a guiding light to those navigating through difficult times. And whether you are dealing with health challenges, professional setbacks, or personal struggles, this channel is dedicated to uplifting your spirit and showing you that even in the darkest moments, there's a path to hope and triumph. So join us, everyone, as we share powerful stories that transcend adversity, reminding you that resilience is a force within us all. So be prepared, everybody, to find the strength and be inspired to navigate life's challenges. So I am your host, Dr. Rani Thanacoody. I am a clinical hypnotherapist, Mars-Venus life and relationship coach, astrologer, tarot reader, life force compassion practitioner, and past life regression practitioner. And today, I have a very special guest all the way from Canada, from Calgary, and her name is Jessica Erlendson Van Remmen. Jessica is a certified yoga therapist, and Jessica also holds a Bachelor of Arts where she studied anatomy, physiology, pathologies, psychology with a minor in anthropology. So Jessica, as a therapist, as a certified yoga therapist, she has over 900 hours of yoga training, including pre- and postnatal women's health. Jessica has been working in the field of peri and post-menopause care since 2009. And her Canadian support group includes over 9,000 women members, and that continues to grow at a very high rate. So very warm welcome to Amazing You, Jessica.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I loved your intro. I think that that's so important. I also really emphasize hope. Hope is medicine.
Yes, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to have you. I saw you on another group, and I say I'm so excited to have you today to talk to the audience, because it's the first time that I have a yoga therapist who also have so much experience on perimenopause, menopause. So I'm really, really happy to have you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So would you please share with us briefly about your story, your background, and what led you to study anatomy, physiology, pathologies, psychology, and to become a certified yoga therapist, Jessica?
Yeah, it's a kind of convoluted story, but if you go way back, my parents were into transcendental meditation with Maharishi. Do you remember those guys?
Yes, I heard of Maharishi. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so they were following him, and his whole thing was sound meditation. So you have your mantra and you repeat your mantra, and it takes you to this gentle place of kindness and loving. And for me, from my perspective as their child, I remember watching them have trouble communicating and then say, we haven't meditated. And they would go upstairs, and my brother was very handy with carpentry, and he built them these pillows so that they could sit upright, but not have strain on their back, because my mother had some back pain. I remember climbing in between them and sitting down, and they were like, but you have to sit still and be quiet. So I was always a chatterbox. So that was hard.
And how old were you at that time?
Oh, I remember doing that when I was like 6, 7, 8, 9. Wow. And I couldn't sit for long.
Okay, yeah.
But I would sit still and I remember just observing how much it changed them. Meditating together. And then, I would run off and play. And then after, when they came back, just watching how they were communicating about whatever problem was in such a different way. And it really stayed with me. And then I became going through school, I had an undiagnosed learning disability, so I had a lot of challenges. But I was really verbal, and I was good at making music and friends. Those were my two things I was good at school. And so I did a lot of music, and I really feel that it was learning music that helped me to understand how smart I was in certain areas, and then stop emphasizing that I wasn't good at math and I wasn't really natural at science. It didn't mean I couldn't understand it. But then later, when I was diagnosed with dyslexia in my junior high school years, around like 13, I suddenly saw, okay, it's not really that I'm not smart. It's just that I can't do certain things in the normal way. I need to look at things a little bit differently. And I was in a music program. So the therapy was like, let's see if we put these junior high school kids in music and choir. So we sang and played instruments all morning, and then all afternoon we did our math and our science and our geography and, the science, the background of the history and everything. Do
Yes.
these kids who've had trouble at school start to excel at school when we allow them to be creative half the day? And the answer was yes, for me anyway. I think the project failed as far as what they wanted to see as far as numbers goes,
Okay.
but it changed my life significantly. And
How
then
did
I
it change
took it on.
your life significantly, if you can share with
Well,
us?
it really just showed me,
Mm-hmm.
the determination factor that I have, that I applied to learning to play the flute and to do the choir. We were an award-winning band. We were an award-winning choir in Toronto, in one of the big Canadian cities.
Okay.
And I had really, I think that's like purpose, right? I had a place where I belonged in the band and I belonged in the choir. And then all of us had our different struggles on the school academic side, and that was just accepted. So that was the first place where I felt like at home for how I was at school. And then, I had more trouble when I got into high school, because high school didn't have that same. I came to Calgary, and it was like you just go to school and you do your math and your science. And
Right.
I became depressed and dropped out. And then,
Mm-hmm.
ended up going back to school after I was already a mom,
Mm-hmm.
and just applied that same stuff from learning those instruments. All you have to do is keep showing up, do
Yeah.
your very best, ask for help when you need it, and force yourself to do your practice. So I did finish high school math so that I could eventually go to university. I wasn't really sure if I wanted to study at the university level, and I was still just writing songs and singing in bands and playing percussion, and I was in my dad's jazz band, and
Mm-hmm.
um, I kind of farted around with a lot of songwriting and playing with different people, and was enjoyable. But at a certain point, I was like, I can't really get better than this without learning all of the stuff. Like, I need to really learn what you're doing with your music theory on a deeper level. And so I went into the jazz program, which was brutal and wonderful. It was all my dad's friends, so they had
Okay.
very high expectations of me,
Right.
which was great and awful. But
Yes.
I did successfully complete that program. And then I went back and finished again to become to get my bachelor degree in music at the U of C. And then shortly after I finished, I joined the gym and I started working out. And the trainers kept saying, "You're stronger than you think." And this desire to do yoga teacher training came back, because as I was developing all of these different skills, I was learning about meditation, and I was studying with different teachers, and I worked under a Swami for a couple of years. And,
Mm.
you know, I knew that I was very interested and invested, but it's another kind of job like music where you have to be very self activated and employed and trying to get people interested and trying to sell people on what you're doing. And I didn't know that I wanted to do that part, but I wanted to do a deeper training. So I did yoga teacher training. And then while I was in yoga teacher training, I realized I really wasn't interested in teaching people how to exercise, because it was very, it was Ashtanga yoga, very athletic yoga.
Okay.
Um, so I didn't really resonate with the training, even though the training was excellent and it was a great foundation. But I met the yoga therapy, the psychologist who was kind of heading that whole thing at Mount Royal University. And he came in and kind of presented to us as yoga students. And I teased him a little bit about EMDR because he was doing EMDR.
Yes.
And
can you explain to the audience what is EMDR?
EMDR is like using your left and your right side brain to try to get them to communicate with each other to deal with trauma and difficult emotions. And it's actually really great stuff.
Yes.
But I teased him about, because where they started was like flashing lights in your eyes.
Okay.
Going back, I teased him about that. But he took it so well, like it didn't faze him even remotely, that I kind of, ribbed him a bit. And I thought, whatever he's got, that's what I want. That sense of self-confidence and assurance. And he knows what he's doing and he knows how helpful it is, so that he can laugh at himself. And he, it's really not invested in what other people think of what he's doing. He's invested in the results that he gets for his clients. So I impulsively applied to the yoga therapy program at Mount Royal. And then I went through that program, which was much more along the lines of what I wanted to do. So you take an individual person who's going through any number of conditions, and then you design a care plan for them based on what they're living. And so, I mean, it didn't really focus on menopause or perimenopause. I had to learn all of that stuff myself. But it gave me all of the skills that I needed to do to be able to help myself and other women when they're dealing with, any number of symptoms. And the good part about my program is, we didn't need a diagnosis. It didn't matter if you had a diagnosis of something. All we would go from is, you're having whatever this symptom is. And then what can we do to help you with that? And a lot of it was like what to avoid, right? Like a hyperactive person with a very busy mind, don't give them a hyperactive yoga program. Like, it's not going to help them. Then we need to calm them down.
Yeah.
And I just continued doing my trainings. I finished in 2019, and then lockdown happened, and I just started learning online. And I had so many great teachers. I studied with people in New York, and I studied with people in BC. All these opportunities that I wouldn't have had if I was just focused on in person. And then I started my Canadian Perimenopause menopause support group, and that just kept growing and growing. And I started designing care plans for those women. And then I really focused in on that as a niche, because although everybody's different, there are very similar themes that come up again and again. And it's been amazing. And a lot of it wouldn't have happened. Like if we hadn't had lockdown, I don't think that I would have started the support group, because I probably would have been able to extend my personal sphere and meet other women who were going through perimenopause and wanted to talk about it. But because we weren't going out and meeting new people and having events and doing those things, I had to do it online. And, I'm just really grateful that I had the support of people that wanted to talk about perimenopause and menopause join right away, and then support my efforts to really help people regardless of what circumstances they are in. And it just grew and grew and grew. And right now, I think we're almost 9,000 members. I think it was 350 people in the last 2 months that joined.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
so
amazing.
it's not from advertising. It's just from, ladies getting in there and finding some help. And then they invite their friends. And other people say they found me because they did a search for perimenopause and nothing comes up because it's kind of a newer term. So they come into the group and, immediately realize that we're not doing a lot of things that other groups might be doing, because we don't participate in, negative discussions and, difficult things come up, but we shut them down pretty quickly because it's not a I'm right group. It's a support group.
Yes.
And along the lines of doing all those other things, I also was a member of Al-Anon, which is for family members of alcoholics. My mother had been an alcoholic, and I learned a lot, and it's all volunteer based. So I learned about how to run a support group. So I apply all of those things to the CPMS group. And so I don't talk about that very much, because it's recovery based, but it's based, all the stuff that I do is based on the 12 steps from AA. And it's applicable to any situation, right? Your life is out of control with perimenopause and menopause symptoms sometimes. And it's very isolating, and you're sick all the time. It's very similar to having an addiction in some ways.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing all that, for sharing your journey. And there's so many great points that you mentioned. I'll choose a few of them so that you can elaborate and help us a bit, help the audience a bit more. You said that because as a child, you saw your parents meditating together. And I think it's very nice to have that, to have parents who are in spirituality while you are still children. How did this have a positive impact? Because you said you saw them, how they interacted with each other, they communicated much better. How did their spirituality had a positive impact on your life, Jessica?
And I think it really did, because my parents were very alternative about how we were. So one example is my sister and I brought home report cards. She consistently got A's in everything, and I consistently got C's in everything except for making friends and playing music.
Okay.
Right? And we were talking about, the report cards. And so they were talking about my sister's grades, and she had gotten a B in geography or something. And they were really on her about what happened, right? Why have you gotten a B here? This is not what we're used to. Why? What happened, right? And she was having some trouble concentrating, and I don't really know where her issue was with that, but we had recently moved, and so I think that might be why. Different school, different expectations. We were all struggling with that. And I felt so ashamed, because here they were deeply disappointed and concerned for her getting a B. And I had maybe never had a B in anything other than, like, I was one of those little girls where they were like, well, she's pretty nice and she seems like she's kind of smart because she can talk all day. But, maybe we'll just pass. We'll just pass her. We'll just put her up to the next level. So when I was in grade 5, I was reading at less than a grade 3 level. But they just kept passing because, I wasn't starting fires or hurting other kids or being disruptive in the class, and I wasn't a difficult student. But that means I was one of those ones that got, lost in the cracks, right? So I got so upset. I jumped up and I ran out of the house.
Mm.
And my dad came running after me. And he grabbed me and he said, what are you doing? What's going on? And I said, oh, you guys are so disappointed in Jennifer. You must be just horrified. I can't ever get a B. And I do try, but I can't do it. And he very wisely said, don't ever compare yourself to your sister.
Wow, that's a great word, great thing to say.
Yeah. She is different than you. She has a different kind of, her making friends is very hard. Yes, she's good at singing, but she doesn't have that determination to learn to read the notes the way that you do. You guys are not the same. We don't have that expectation for you because we know that there's something going on. We just don't know what it is. So you just keep going and you just keep trying, and you're good enough exactly the way that you are. So I'm getting all emotional about it, but like, why? How would he have been able to come to that if he didn't have that spiritual understanding that we are human beings, but we're spiritual creatures having a human experience, not a human being who's supposed to turn out like everybody else,
Yeah,
right?
I think he's got a lot of emotional intelligence, your dad,
Yeah, he did.
Jessica.
And
Yeah.
so did my mom. They were extremely, my mother took me back to school so many times saying, there's something wrong with my daughter. She needs more help. And I remember the principal saying, we would love to help her more, but we only have so much funding. And we have deeply troubled children here. So all of the funding is going to the ones that have like behavior problems. And, we don't have the money for that. So it's not going to happen. Until much later, when I finally had the big theory with me is that she just doesn't try hard enough. And then when they put me into the music program, and I was there every morning for early morning rehearsal, and I was there for every extra opportunity, and I wanted to join the small ensemble, and I wanted to be in the small choir, and I wanted to sing the song in French, and I wanted to, I did everything so they were like, well, she's not lazy. She actually does really care to do well. So there is something missing here.
But it's very interesting that your parents found that, because you were very gifted for music. You told me how many instruments you played now. It's like everybody has their own gifts, but we put so much emphasis in this world on academic studies, because not everybody should go to university. And then when you look at it, a lot of my students were telling me that they are not learning the thing though they learn the theories, yes, but when they go to companies, it's being thrown out of the wind. That doesn't matter anymore. So I think because music was your passion, you were gifted for that. This is what you love to do. That's why you did it so well. But academic studies, you didn't like it. You knew as a little girl that, yeah, you have to do it, but you have your gift. You have something inside of you that you wanted to put out. It's the music. And you are writing music, songs. So that's the gift that you've got. It's like everybody's has their own gifts that they come here to share with the world, and that's beautiful that you've got yours. Yeah. And I think
I use that too, with the yoga therapy.
yeah.
I use music a lot, and it's not that I make them, play an instrument, but I help them explore how they can use music in a way that's soothing and loving for themselves, and chanting if they're interested, and like humming will really help, and detaching from the judgment of the sound being good or bad.
Oh
And
yes.
then I'm still teaching music lessons as well, but with those students now, I find I'm bringing in all of the therapy aspects of the yoga as well to help them learn to center and ground and support themselves and be patient with the process so that they can learn the difficult songs, and then celebrating with them when they learn a new skill in a way that I wasn't able to without having that background. A lot of the students that I end up working with are students who have an undiagnosed learning disability, or they have some kind of challenge, or they've tried the traditional way of doing things and it didn't work for them. And they need someone like, one example is I had this one student who loved to hang upside down. So she'd play the piano and she'd get to a point probably where she was really frustrated or something was really sticking and she couldn't quite get it. And she'd just go over upside down on the piano bench. And I would just watch her, right? What's she doing? She's self-correcting. So let's just let her do that. And then she would sit back up again and she would immediately go back to it and no problem. And she'd get it. And then, learning later about yoga therapy, I was like, oh, she was doing an inversion. An inversion in yoga is how we change our perspective. Like we change that perspective.
Yes.
Everything looks different when you're upside down.
Yes.
Your blood rushes to your head.
Yeah.
We know all of these things, but because I'm not a rigid teacher and I'm trying to help people with where they're at to get to where they want to go, I'm able to just work with them in that way where we go with their natural skills, their natural abilities, and then enhance that and make that, more beneficial instead of fighting against the stuff that they're not necessarily good at, embracing those natural abilities. And that's how you get success, right?
Yes. And that is beautiful that you are combining yoga and music, because sound, if we look at it, it's extremely healing. I have a singing bowl that I play, and that soothes me, that calms me down. Any musical instrument, when people play, it's really soothing to the mind, soothing to the body, and it helps in healing as well. It helps the body to heal. So I think it's great that you are doing that, and I believe that people should go back. And there's a lot of therapies now about sound healing, how it's healing to the body. So I think that is super powerful to use sound healing in the in the work that you do, because we have been so, we've been so focused on everything outside that we forgot how sound is important in our life. And that's the sound definitely help us to connect to those parts of us that feel wounded, that feel hurt, and help to soothe it, to heal it. So that is wonderful, the job that you do with sound healing. Tell us a bit more about sound healing, and what are the other benefits that you've seen with your clients? I think so that the audience, because I never had anybody who talk about yoga and sound healing, because I think it is both are combined together, because the traditional medicine, they used to look at all these types of use healing, use sound, yoga, breathing. Breathing is so important, we don't realize. So would you please share a bit more about that? Thank you.
Well, one of the things I noticed right away being in perimenopause myself is that sometimes, like nothing has changed. Honestly, nothing has changed. But all of a sudden, I would be really anxious or really angry or really just agitated or frustrated or having some strange sensations in my body, and turning to music, just putting on something to listen to, something that's soothing or maybe, activating. If it was something like one of my personal mentors, when we first got locked down, I started to get pretty depressed, as did a lot of people. And she said, don't forget, right? Your music, your love of music, that's a tool that you can tap into. So her homework for me was every day, in the first thing in the morning, you're going to listen to music. And I don't care what it is. I don't care how long you listen to it for, but put anything on in the morning and see if you can't come out of that, because you living through this pandemic is important. It's important to the people that love you. It's important to the people that are around you right now. And it might be important to people who haven't met you yet, because we don't know. Because I was feeling like, oh, I'm just going to die here, right? Like I have a chronic inflammatory condition. I was one of the lucky ones that if I caught COVID, I probably would have died. So I was preparing for that. And she said, no, don't you do that. So I started thinking like, well, what kind of music do I like? Because I've done so much, academic and learning and choirs and bands and things that where it's like, this is what we're working on for this show. So I started just experimenting and going on YouTube and listening to different things. And obviously I love chant. I love kirtan. And then I started I don't know how I got on this one day. It was like, oh, disco. So I put on disco. And then I was like, I love the disco. Okay. It makes me immediately perk up. Yeah. I feel like moving my body. My body feels happy. I have all these, associations probably from growing up in the 70s and listening to disco on the radio or whatever it is. And so I made that part of my routine. And I recommend that now to women. And I have a few different offerings, like on my Insight Timer. I have one that's a 20-minute tongue drum experiment. And I had a theory about patterns. So patterns that repeat soothe our nervous system. That's why we end up in toxic relationships and we keep going back, because although it's toxic, it's also soothing because it's a pattern that repeats, right? So if you go based on what is the lowest common denominator in music, you have pitch and you have rhythm, and you're adding those things together in a way that's predictable. So the lowest numbers are 2 or 3. So I did 2 groups of 2 and 3 groups of 3, and I added them into a pattern that's mostly predictable, but has very slight variations. And I played it live over 20 minutes. I didn't know if it would work, but theoretically, that should calm your nervous system because it's a pattern that repeats, but it's not exactly the same. So it's not boring for your brain, because every so often it's a different note. Okay. Or it's slightly longer or it's slightly shorter. And then I started sharing it with people. What do you think of this? Yes. And I have one, this is an interesting, she does like bookkeeping when she has to do her numbers. She'll put on the tongue drum because she would notice that she's starting to get it. Because it's like math. Am I going to make a mistake? And is it going to be right? Yeah. She puts it on and listens to the tongue drum experiment while she's doing her numbers, and she gets done faster, and she's not upset, and she's able to focus much better. And it's not like a song that might distract you from what you're doing, because it's just a pattern that repeats. And so, yeah, it works. It actually works. So I've been able to design some really interesting things that way.
That is incredible, because I can relate to that. When I was doing my master's in Australia, I used to play a lot of the 4 Seasons by Vivaldi. I don't know, I would just play that when I was doing my assignment. It was constantly, every time I have to study, I would put the music in the background, and that helped me so much to finish my assignment, to write it up. So what would you like to tell the audience so that those who are facing some tough times, what practical advice can you suggest to them today, Jessica?
Well, definitely if you like singing, sing along, because we have the vagus nerve that runs down from the cranial nerve, right? It's running down the back of your spine, and then it wraps around your whole digestive system. And it's kind of a quick hack to calm yourself down humming, right? It doesn't have to even be a note. If you put your hand on the back of your head, you can feel that vibration, like as if you were a little dolly and I put your head on the top of your spine. The cranial nerve is right there. So, even if you say you love some silly song from the Monkees, hey, hey, we're the Monkees. It doesn't matter what it is, just that you like it. And then you hum along or you sing along. Your body gets this information like, oh, everything must be all right, because if it wasn't, I wouldn't be singing. Right? And then your whole hormone system and your nervous system kind of goes, oh, I guess everything is all right. And your digestion calms down and you go into the parasympathetic. Now, not singing in terms of I'm not saying that you should really listen to what you sound like, because that's a different way of using music, right? That's more of an academic way. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But to get the benefits, it doesn't matter if you're in the right note or not. You can be really off. I have one friend who came to me as a teenager and said, I can't sing, I'm tone deaf. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, well, let's just sing something together.
Yeah.
And I really listened to what he was singing. And I was like, what the thing is, you're not quite hitting the note, like 440 is the A note, right? You're not quite exactly there, but the general shape of the melody you are hitting. It's just you're starting at slightly different point. So I don't think you should stop singing. I think you should just keep singing as much as you possibly can. And if you want to get better, I bet you probably will. But if you don't want to get better, that's actually not the point. The point of this whole, with my minor in anthropology, one of the things that I learned is it's all how we define things, right?
Yes.
Western music decided that this is C and this is A and this is G and it goes like this. And then we have a line and then this means that. But music itself, if you look at other cultures, they don't define it that way at all. Not at all. It's a completely different system. It is not wrong, though. It's just different.
Yeah.
When you take that into mind, why would it matter if you're singing the right note? It makes no difference if you're singing the right note. Not that I'm saying, go and, sing at the coffee shop for everybody and not care if you're hitting the right note. I wouldn't recommend doing that. But if you're having a real struggle with something and you're getting stuck on something, put on a piece of music that you like and hum along. Or one of the first experiences that I had when I was a little kid that really stuck out was there was a little deaf boy that lived down the street, and I loved him. We couldn't talk because he was nonverbal, but I wanted to play with him so badly. This goes back to my, being good at making friends, which is probably why I work with people. And I asked my mom, he doesn't come out and play with the other kids, so how can I play with him? And she said, just go knock on the door and ask if he can play. So I did, and the mom said, well, he can't really talk, so I'm not really sure how he would be able to play with you, but he's listening to music right now if you'd like to go listen to music with him. And I was like, how does he listen to music? And she had this set up with the old-timey sound system. So the record player was on top and the different speakers were on either side like a desk. And he was sitting underneath with his hands on the speakers, listening to the vibration through his hand. So I crawled under there and I sat there and we listened to music. I don't know how long. And we were smiling and communicating with each other about the music non-verbally. And we became friends. And
because we are frequencies, Jessica, at the end of the day. We vibrate. We are vibrations. We vibrate. Absolutely. That's why you could communicate. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And his mom was amazed that this kid would come over and want to sit under there and listen in this different way. but maybe because of the way my parents were.
Yeah.
They were so open and people did
Yes.
things differently all the time. And so I went home and told them that I'd listened with the little deaf boy, and they were thrilled for me to have that experience of understanding the human connection in a way that was nonverbal for a kid who loved to talk, and it made me
Yes.
understand music in a different way because I was like, I felt the music in my hands. You
Yes.
can listen to music in that different way. So if you're no, I can't sing and I don't feel comfortable humming, you can put your hands on the speaker and feel the sound vibration of that song, and it will come through your hands.
Mm,
Left hand comes directly into the heart. It'll
definitely.
soothe your whole system.
Thank you. I'll do that. I'll do that myself. Thank you so much. Jessica, I could talk to you for the whole day. What you are saying is super interesting, and the audience, I'm really glad that they are able to hear you today. And I've got my last question for you. Tell us a bit more about what you do and how can people reach out to you, Jessica, because I've got only 5 minutes before another meeting. So please share with us.
Yeah, and pretty easy to find. You can look in Facebook. There's the CPMS, Canadian Perimenopause Menopause Support Group. That's really easy. And there's the Insight Timer. I'm on there as JessicaMyrnaRae. I'm on Instagram as Perimenopause Support. And I have the Canadian Perimeno website as well, where you can find me. And I love working with people one-on-one. I'm also designing classes and workshops, and I'm doing the planning for the second annual CPMS symposium coming up in November. I've got a great lineup for that. And, it's I have my music teaching website. That's jessicamusic.ca. So you can go in there, and it's pretty basic, but you can sign up. And I'm also working on a platform called Forte, which is all about it was designed by the people at Juilliard for music lessons. So it's like Zoom, but it's designed for music lessons. And people can find me on there and book a meet and greet and then decide if they want to do some music lessons. And everything I do is from that therapeutic standpoint now, hey? So, and I just love it. I think that's probably, the one thing about combining my gifts, right? My love of music and also working with people and then helping to bring everybody together to a place where they feel empowered to develop the life that they want for themselves.
Yeah. Jessica, it's been fantastic talking to you. Oh my God, it's been really beautiful having that conversation with you about music, about sound, about vibration, and how healing it is to the body, how we can use that to heal ourselves. So, and and the practice of yoga, how important it is to have some practice, some exercise, some routine, some self-care, some inner work. So important, everybody. So big thank you, Jessica, for your time today, and I wish you a lot of success in all your endeavors, your future endeavors, and big thank you to the audience for watching, sharing, and listening. And take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Bye.